Good afternoon, and welcome to our first ever customer partnership webinar. It is our first, so we are learning as we get through this. But it is currently the only way that we can really communicate with customers, and it does feel a little strange. I'm at home, on the sofa. I've never done a presentation in this format before, but we really want to keep customers informed, and this, like I say, is the best way to do it. So my name is Dasos Christou. I'm the Executive Director of Customer Relations at Silver Homes. And like I say, this is our first webinar, although we do normally hold these customer partnership events 3 times a year in Bracknell. So the plan is that I'll shortly invite Alan Ward, our Chief Executive, to give you a brief overview of how we have responded during the pandemic. Laura Johnson, our Executive Director for Assets and Growth, will then join the webinar and update you on our repair and maintenance services. And then I'll come back to talk to you about some of the additional ways we have helped our customers over the last few months. We're going to round off the webinar with a question and answer session where we will be joined by Amy Sullivan, our Communications Advisor. Thank you to everyone who has already sent in questions. If you haven't, don't worry. You can send a question at any time throughout the webinar when we're speaking. All you have to do is click the arrow button or the question mark button on your screen and type in your question, and we'll get those. So without further delay, I will now ask Alan to join us, and I will be back later on.
So good afternoon. As Dasos said, I'm Alan Ward, Chief Exec at Silver Homes, and I hope you're all well. So it's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you, albeit virtually, through this webinar technology. I have to say that everybody in the organisation and everybody I speak to has become much more tech savvy over the last few months, that's for sure. So what I'm going to do is just going to give you a brief overview of what we've been doing as a business since the pandemic took hold in the UK and since we all went into lockdown, which, believe it or not, was almost exactly 5 months ago. Now, in some respects, we knew it was coming. We've been planning our response for a few weeks, having seen other countries already enter into lockdown. We made sure all our office-based colleagues could work from home, and in the week running up to the lockdown, we only, in fact, had a small number of colleagues in the office. We also started planning changes to our frontline services just in case access to customers' homes was restricted. We also started to secure or try and secure a supply of PPE. That's things like masks, gloves and aprons and things that we've all become used to over the last few months, because we anticipated that there would be shortages, and indeed that's exactly what happened. Now, as you can imagine, in a free market, prices went through the roof, and we were paying an awful lot of money for PPE, but we managed to source what we needed from all over the country and in some cases abroad. And yes, whilst it was always tight, we never had to stop what we were doing because of shortages of PPE. Now, by the time we entered into the lockdown, as I said, nearly 5 months ago, we'd already made it possible for all our teams to work from home. We'd got a good supply of PPE, and we'd already, before the UK went into lockdown, limited access to our independent living schemes because of the particularly vulnerable nature of the people that live in them. Now, of course, at this point, we didn't know exactly what the government guidance would be or how our supply chains would be affected, but our main priority at that time and at all times was to keep colleagues and customers safe whilst they were ensuring that key services could continue to be delivered. And I have to say that the response from our colleagues has been fantastic. And I am very, very proud of the way they've adapted to new ways of working and the way they've gone above and beyond for our customers. We knew as well that many of our vulnerable customers were at risk of being isolated from their loved ones, so we needed to go the extra mile for them too. And Dasos will talk to you about some of the things, some of the initiatives that we put in place. All of our colleagues worked extremely hard during the lockdown. They managed to keep most services running. We had to scale some things down, so we were only doing emergency and health and safety compliance works and in terms of repairs, but we were still able to do repairs in empty properties. Our customer contact hub was working from home. We were still doing money advice. In fact, we were still able to let properties as well, albeit it was much more restricted because councils were limited in their arrangements for choice-based letting schemes. Our independent living schemes were still providing support to customers, and we were in the main still able to carry out caretaking services and grounds maintenance services. Now, some of our colleagues usually visit customers at home, and that was not possible, particularly in the early days of the lockdown. So they were keeping in touch through other means, using their phones or emails, texts, and web chat. What we had to do before we did anything was to carry out a detailed risk assessment. And having done that risk assessment, then introduce clear guidance to colleagues so that they could work in a COVID-19 safe way. And that means, for example, that where they had to enter a customer's home, and that was either us or it could have been one of our contractors as well, then these safety measures were communicated to our customers in advance, and they had to follow them when they went into the customer's home. Now, sometimes we had customers who were shielding because they were particularly vulnerable, or they were self-isolating because they or a family member had COVID-19 symptoms. So that made it much harder for us to complete essential work such as gas servicing. But I am pleased to say that those cases were limited, and we worked with our customers to get access as soon as we possibly could. The UK is now in a recession, and we knew that it was coming. It's now been confirmed that we've been in recession for the last few months. But as a business, we were able to put in place an emergency budget to manage our operational response to COVID-19. We've also done lots of work to test our financial plan and to make sure we can withstand any further challenges. As a business, we are financially strong, and we've been able to withstand the impacts of COVID-19. All of our surpluses, as you know, as a not-for-profit organisation, goes into homes and services. So it means that we can ensure that services continue to be delivered and houses maintained broadly in line with our previous plans. We know that there will be some challenges. For example, we know rent arrears will rise as many of our customers struggle with their employment and their household finances. Many customers were furloughed from work and were not receiving their full income, and many others have had to apply for universal credit, and having done so have experienced payment delays. We think it will take some time for things to recover, but our teams are there, our rents teams, our service charge teams can help you if you're having difficulties, and I would advise you to get in touch with them as early as possible if you need any support. As a business, our expectation is that we will continue to feel the impacts of COVID-19 through the rest of this year and well into 2021. However, we think that things will recover by 2022. So what can you expect to see now? Well, as the lockdown is being eased, our teams are working really hard to expand the scope and scale of services in a way that's fair and effective, stays within government guidelines. We always have to do that, and continues to protect both colleagues and customers. We've opened up our office again, not to the public, but on a limited basis for a small number of colleagues who were struggling to work from home. And we've started to work back out on site again with some of our contractors and developers to deliver major repairs and deliver new homes. And in our independent living schemes, customers can now meet with family and friends in communal areas, both outdoors and indoors now as well. This pandemic has been a major challenge for everyone. It's affected every single person in the country to a greater or lesser extent. And at one end of the scale, we've all been inconvenienced. We've all had a restricted way of life. But at the other end of the scale, families and friends have lost loved ones, and often in the most tragic circumstances. And this is going to have an impact on all of us as a nation for many, many years to come. And I hope we never see anything like this again. But we will all have learned how to plan, how to cope better as a result of these experiences. And I hope that these experiences result in a more resilient health service, more resilient social care services. These were already under pressure before the lockdown, and we can all see that they are now so clearly in need of more than just a round of applause once a week. And a virus like this is not discriminatory. It clearly affects some communities more than others. And what we've seen now in terms of some of the research is that there are very clear links to the quality of housing and to income levels. And that makes organisations like housing associations, such as Silver Homes, even more relevant as we strive to deliver decent, affordable homes to those in most need. And we will reflect on what we've learned as a business over the last few months. We will add those learnings to the rest of the challenges that we face, including things like responding to the climate crisis, as we develop our strategies over the next few years. So finally, by way of introduction, I would just like to thank you as our customers for bearing with us during these last few months. I know we've not been able to deliver our full services, and we've had to prioritise what we do. We've had to try and keep communication channels open and tell people what they can expect. But as you can imagine, it's been very difficult to do that on every single occasion. So if we have let you down at any point, then I'm sorry about that. But I want you to know that we are continuing to do everything possible to support you, give you the best quality of life in your home. So now I'm going to hand over to Laura Johnson, and she's going to talk a little bit more about our repairs and maintenance service. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Johnson and I'm the Exec Director for Assets and Growth here at Silver Homes. And my responsibility is to look after the repair service and work with all my colleagues to try and make sure that we undertake the repairs to your homes when you call us to let us know. As you know, during lockdown, the repairs service was substantially reduced due to the social distancing guidelines that came in. We could only undertake emergency repairs where we could and compliance testing. So if you needed your boiler service in the last 5 months, you will have heard from us. In fact, we brought quite a lot of boiler servicing forward to try and make sure that we did as many as possible while we had the spare capacity. So we've been doing emergency repairs for those people who needed them and doing all of our compliance testing to make sure that you're safe in your home. From the end of March, when lockdown was put in place, to the end of June, we have completed over 1,100 emergency repairs. So if you called us and there was something urgent like a water leak or your boiler had stopped working and you didn't have heating and hot water, we did come out and fix that problem, hopefully as soon as possible. Our target was to do that within 24 hours. What we noticed in the early days of lockdown is lots of people didn't call us. Even with emergency repairs, and that made us quite concerned because we know that people have emergency repairs, we know that they want them to be completed, but obviously people were very cautious about their safety or about letting anybody into their home. And I would want to reassure you that we have worked really hard with our colleagues who come out into your home to do repair service to make sure that they have the full PPE so they're safe when they come in, and that we check with them every day to make sure that they are well and that they and none of their family are showing any signs of COVID-19. So I do want to reassure you that if you have an emergency repair and you make a call to us, we'll send somebody out and they will have had the most appropriate checks. Our repairs teams are now working through all the routine repairs that were booked in with us before lockdown. So you'll remember it was really wet in February. It seems like a long time ago now. And we had some storms with very high winds, much like we have today, where it's really windy outside. And when this happens, as you would expect, we get a high number of calls about fence panels that come down, guttering that's overflowing, and roof leaks. So we had a high number of responsive repairs that we needed to undertake in February and March. That's not unusual. Our highest peak period is normally between November and March, when the winter's with us, and that's when we get the highest winds and the greatest storms, which causes the most damage to people's properties. We know that getting fences fixed has been particularly frustrating for you, and we know that because you phone and you tell us, and the CEC Customer Experience Centre do talk to us and do let us know, and we take that very seriously. We know it's really even more frustrating when those fence panels make up a boundary with a road or a neighbour, and it compromises your privacy. Installing new fences was one of those items that just had to stop during lockdown. Although I can appreciate that it felt very urgent to you to restore the privacy in your garden, we just couldn't have two people who managed to stay 2 meters apart to put new fences in. So we had to stop that service from the end of March until right to the end of June. And only now have we started doing that again in quite a limited way. We've also found it really hard to source fence panels. I know that might sound a little odd, but actually, because there was such a high demand for them in the early part of the year, and then a lot of them come from abroad, and then they have to be shipped in. All the factories that make them stopped making them because they weren't essential. It's taking a little bit of time for that supply chain of fence panels to start again. So we're just saying, bear with us. What we have done though, knowing full well that fencing is one of those areas where people are really irritated, is that we've decided to bring in some extra resources, and we're just in the process of procuring contractors to assist us in getting through the backlog. We hope to have them in place towards the end of September, and then we'll have extra resources to get out there and to do as many of them as possible, particularly before the winter season starts with us again. So please bear with us. We know it's a problem. We're bringing in extra people. We're sourcing the materials to enable us to do it, and we will be cracking on with it, so you'll be able to see some action on that front. Since lockdown was lifted and we were able to start working again on doing routine repairs, so that's really been since the end of June 2020, we have completed over 2,000 routine repair jobs. So even if you haven't had yours done, we have been out and about doing that work again. This figure is made up of the backlog, as I said, from January, February and March, which were our winter season, and then also repairs that were reported to us since then, and we've been prioritising those on customers and their ability to live and enjoy their home. So as you know, we've got people who are more vulnerable, so we try to get out to them as quickly as possible in order to undertake those repairs. So examples of some of the types of repairs that we've been doing are things like blocked toilets, severe water leaks, roofing and guttering repairs, which is really important for us to make sure that those don't get any worse. If your boiler's failed and you haven't got any heating or hot water, it's really problematic. And we want to make sure that properties are secure, so we know that locks break, windows break, and we've been getting out there and boarding those up. So you may have been frustrated that you haven't had that repair done, even if it happened before lockdown. But as I said, we've been prioritising that type of repair we're undertaking. So who gets the repair? We've been doing this by assessing whether it's urgent. So how quickly does it need to take place to make sure that we protect the health and safety of our customers? When was it booked? We're just currently prioritising requests made before the lockdown in date order. So if you reported it in February and we hadn't got to you, those are getting done more quickly than the ones that were reported in March. If you've had no heating or hot water, or your boiler's broken during the winter season, that's normally a 24-hour job. During the summer season, we do 20 days, but we're also looking at who's vulnerable and getting out there and doing that more quickly. We're also having to make sure that we can do it safely, to make sure that not only our guys who are out there doing the work can social distance, but also if our customers are shielding or vulnerable. So we're making every effort to respect what our customers are saying to us about how they want to stay safe. Well, as I said, our frontline colleagues take daily health checks, and if they have any COVID-19 symptoms, they can't come to work. So we have to match the jobs to the people who we have available who are fit to work, which does mean that we've had some reduction in the numbers of staff who are able to do the work for us. But it's just like you, they've been impacted by COVID-19. We've seen some impact on supply and availability of materials, and some of that's been in short supply just because it comes in from abroad, and all the places that manufacture those goods haven't been able to work during the lockdown period. That's definitely easing, which is being great, but it has caused some glitches in us just being able to get what we need when we want it. And we've also worked with a number of contractors who help us to undertake our repair service. They also have to have their own measures in place to make sure that they can work responsibly with COVID-19, and they've also have delays according to their workforce that's available. We have, however, been undertaking all compliance checks during the lockdown period. So that means checks on gas, water, fire, asbestos and electrical safety checks, and lift servicing. Where works have been required as a result of these checks, then these have been prioritised and undertaken swiftly to make sure that customers are safe and the properties are in good repair. So we've been doing that the whole time, and we continue to do that, and that's always been very much our top priority. So we've undertaken nearly 2,500 gas boiler service checks from the 1st of April to August. We do these services during the spring and summer because it means that we can focus our resources more on boiler breakdowns in the winter months. But what we've done is we've upped that programme during the lockdown period to make sure that we can get out to as many as possible of those. And then when our customers started calling us again, because things started to break when lockdown finished, we would have more people to help us to do that. During lockdown, as Alan said, we've kept working on properties that became vacant. So when people moved out or that were already vacant at the start of lockdown, we wanted to keep working on those safely so that we could bring them back into use for people who were on Bracknell Forest Council's waiting list, and or homeless families or people who were rough sleeping during the lockdown period so they could get access to urgently needed accommodation. We're continuing to work on voids, and the waiting list with Bracknell Forest Council is opened back up again. So we're working with our lettings team to make sure that if you need a home, we'll make one available to you as quickly as possible with Silver Homes. We started working again on some of our planned works programmes, so roof renewals, boiler replacements, window replacement programmes. We hope to be able to start again on our kitchen and bathroom replacement programme in the autumn, but this will be subject to conversations with customers who are on that schedule being happy for us to do those works in their home. If they're not happy about it, then we'll push that back. Doesn't mean that you don't get it. We respect the fact that people might not want us doing work in the home. It's pretty intrusive having your kitchen replaced. So all we'll do is re-timetable that for later in the year. I really want to thank you for your continued patience. While we tackle the backlog of repairs from the winter months before the lockdown started, which is always our busiest months, whilst we undertake emergency repairs that we need to deal with day to day, and understand that we try to help our most vulnerable customers first, because they just sometimes need repairs more quickly than other people. I know the burning question is for most of you is when are we going to start our repairs service up again, and when is it going to be operating normally? When can I phone up and report a repair, or when can I report one with the Silver online portal? I'm really sorry I don't have a date for you just yet, because as I've said, I sound a little bit like a cracked record. We're working through the backlog, we're dealing with emergencies, and we're trying to prioritise those most urgent repairs as quickly as possible. Getting the repair service is undoubtedly Silver Homes' top priority right now. We know it's something that our customers care about more than anything. So we are doing everything we can to have a look at when we can open up those lines again to you, and you'll be able to start reporting. And when we can, the minute we think we can open the service up again and you can report a repair, and then we can give you a timeline in which we can come out and do the maintenance, then we'll let you know. We'll put stuff up on Facebook, we'll put stuff up on our website, we'll tweet about it, and we'll make sure that all of our customers know that the repair service is open again for people who want to report day-to-day repairs. I want to really thank you for coming to the webinar today and listening to us. Normally we'd see you in person, but doing it remotely is just a good way for us to manage to keep in touch with you. I'm going to hand back now to Dassos, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the customer care initiatives we've been doing since lockdown. I'll see you later at the Q&A.
Thanks, Laura. So you've heard about how we've managed to keep our essential services running, including the emergency repairs, caretaking, grounds maintenance, and of course our independent living schemes, including catering where it's provided. The rest of the business has adapted quickly and brilliantly, and we've been able to provide our support services from home using technology like this. So what I want to cover now are the additional services we've provided during this period. which I know from the feedback I've received, they've made an enormous difference to our customers' lives. All of these ideas came from our employees who wanted to do everything possible to support our customers, and I'm extremely impressed by their commitment and dedication. At the start of lockdown, many of our customers suddenly found themselves in the shielding category, which meant that they couldn't leave their homes to buy essential supplies. So we set up a shopping and delivery scheme very quickly to help them get their medication and food. Lots of our employees wanted to volunteer to help out in addition to their day-to-day work. In April and May, these colleagues were completing over 100 shopping trips each month for our customers and leaving the deliveries safely on their doorstep. We also wanted to provide more support for people with hoarding behaviours who were spending more time in their homes while finding it increasingly difficult to clear away unused items. Now, we've run a hoarding support group for some time now, but during lockdown, all face-to-face meetings had to be cancelled. We knew that our customers with hoarding behaviours needed more support than ever, so we set up a monthly phone call, and that made sure that people in the community could keep getting confidential and professional help with their homes. These sessions are still running over the phone every month, and the next one's on Thursday, the 10th of September at 7 p.m. So if you know anybody or want to join that, then get in touch with us and we can give you the details. As the lockdown continued, we realised many of our customers who were living alone were feeling isolated and lonely. Two of our colleagues came up with a brilliant concept of phone pals to help tackle this situation. The idea was very simple but extremely effective. And it was that we called all of our customers who signed up for this programme every week to just have a chat. In total, 34 of our colleagues volunteered to become phone pals, and in July they'd helped 1,240 customers and stayed in regular contact with them, which is just amazing. Now that lockdown has eased and people can leave their homes and meet with friends and family, this wellbeing support is not needed by so many people. Instead, our colleague volunteers are now focusing on reopening our other services. So in one of the darkest periods that I can remember, the team have truly demonstrated that this is more than just a job to them. They've thought of creative ways that will make a real difference to our customers and hopefully bring a smile in their hour of need. So I've been really humbled by what they've all done and continue to do through this period. Now, I know you're keen to have your questions answered, and we've been talking for quite some time now, and there's a few to get through. I know some of you have been asking these questions as we've been talking. So thank you for listening to these updates. I hope you have found them useful. And I'm now going to invite Alan, Laura, and Amy to join me again, and we will answer your questions.
Hi. All right, so we're into the final stretch now, the Q&A. Thank you for staying with us and for spending this blustery Friday afternoon watching our webinar. So thanks to everyone who has sent in a question either before the webinar started or during the webinar. We will try to answer as many of those questions as possible during the time that we have left. But if we can't get around to everyone's, then don't worry, we will be in touch in the next few days with an answer. So your questions. The first one is about how we responded as a business to COVID-19. So I think, Alan, if you could answer this one, that might make sense. So this question is, how did Silver Homes make important decisions that impacted its customers during the lockdown?
Well, thanks for that question. It seems like a very long time ago now, but I mean, when it all first started, we had set up what we call an emergency planning group that's within the business. So so there was the exec team and a number of senior managers right the way across the business, everyone who had an input into how we as a business needed to respond to the pandemic and how we might need to shape our services and our communications to customers and things like that. So we had that group set up. We had that group set up a couple of weeks before the lockdown. The real challenge for us was that government guidance either didn't exist or it came out sporadically, and often we were trying to make decisions based on guidance and advice that we were aware of, that trying to second guess exactly what might happen. A good example of that, for example, is whether we should carry on doing servicing gas boilers. And as a business, we were conscious that the government very quickly announced that your MOT could be extended for 6 months. So we thought, well, actually, if that's the case, then possibly gas boilers don't need to be serviced for 6 months. And we waited, and of course it never came. But clearly driving a car is not as risky as getting your, well, you would think so, but not as risky as getting your gas boiler service. So we had to keep doing it, and we had to keep planning with a workforce that where some people were shielding, some people were self-isolating. As Laura said, we brought in some contractors to help us. So we had this emergency planning group. It met twice a week. I can remember getting groups of people together over the weekends and evenings to try and discuss how we responded to it. We also kept our board really informed, and one of the things the board did very early on was to give us emergency powers to make quick decisions, and I think that was really important for us. They also gave us a budget to work with so that we weren't having to think about where we were going to get the money from if we needed to buy PPE, for example. So all that happened. We kept our customer partnership board up to date as much as we could, and we meet with them every 6 months, every 6 weeks as well, and we were giving them information on what we were doing, and of course trying to communicate with the whole business as we were making decisions as we were going along. So I think it worked really well. And one of the things we have done within the last few weeks is carry out a major review of how our emergency planning worked. And the feedback that we've had so far is that it worked really well. Yeah, there's things we could have done better, things we could have done a little bit quicker, and we will learn the lessons from that and build it into our emergency planning arrangements for the future. Is that okay?
Thank you, Alan. While you're there on the screen, we've got another question for you. Has Silver Homes put any members of staff on furlough during the lockdown, and has anyone subsequently become redundant?
Okay, no, we didn't put anybody on furlough, and no, we haven't made anybody redundant. The furlough scheme, or the job retention scheme, as it was known, was announced by the government. We looked at it, and of course the housing association sector as a whole was told that it could furlough people and we could claim some money back, but we genuinely felt as an organisation that it wasn't intended for organisations like us. There are commercial organisations out there in the hospitality sector, there are hotels, pubs, leisure centres, whatever, that were closed down, shops, people desperately short of revenue income. Our revenue stream is broadly okay because people pay their rents, or it comes through housing benefit or universal credit. So, and we were able to keep most people working. So we genuinely felt that the scheme was not for us and that we shouldn't claim it. At the end of the day, someone's going to have to pay all this back, and we're all taxpayers in some way or another, and we all have to pay it back at some point. So we made the decision, as did a lot of housing associations, not to claim any money under the furlough scheme. And because it hasn't had a massive detrimental impact on us in terms of our finances, we've not had to make anyone redundant as a consequence of this either.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Okay, so Laura, I know that you did mention repairs earlier in your presentation, but we have had a few questions in about specific repairs to people's homes during the course of the webinar. So for people who are asking, when will they be able to book a repair for their homes? Could you provide some more clarification around your answer for that?
I wish I could, and I realise this is the burning question about when you're going to be able to report your repair on My Silver, or phone the customer experience centre and talk to one of our sort of our great people on the phone there. Unfortunately, we are just working through all of the backlog of repairs, which is taking us some time. I appreciate that we've been open again since the end of June. And it's now the middle of August, so people are quite rightly going, well, surely you've worked through them all by now and you should be ready to just kind of open up phone lines again. But it's not been quite as straightforward as that. because it's the winter backlog of repairs that we're working through, which is always more than it is at other times of year. We had reduced staff numbers because, as I said in my presentation, they've been impacted by COVID as well. So we've had less people working than we would normally have. We've had people who've left during the period, and so we're just in a process of recruiting again to those vacancies, and that takes a little bit of time because we've all been working remotely, and it's getting those people into post and getting, understanding their experience and introducing them to Silver and all of the things that involves. We have been doing a lot of work with contractors who've been helping us to boost our resources, and as I probably rather went on far too long about fencing, but it is something that we get a lot of calls about. We've been looking to bring in extra resources to help us with that, and I know it's really frustrating for customers. So not yet, bear with us. We will be saying something to customers in the very near future about when we're going to be opening up again. It won't be very long until we start to tell you how we're going to open up and how we're going to phase that and how you're going to be able to report repairs. If you have an emergency repair, you can still phone up and we still will come out and do it. So please don't not phone us if you have water leaks or something very urgent. Or if you're a member of the community or someone who's a Silver tenant who's particularly vulnerable, please do give us a ring because we are prioritising calls from those customers who really do need something fixing very quickly. They're vulnerable members of the community. They may need they may have had broken windows or need their locks replacing because they've got locked out, or kind of their toilet is blocked, and we are prioritising those people to go out and fix their repairs very quickly. So when we come and talk to you about when we open the service up again, we will be, as I said, making sure that everybody knows about it. We'll be using all of our electronic channels that we've used during lockdown, which have been really successful, I think, in getting the message out there to customers about what we've been up to at Silver Homes. We get lots of hits on our Facebook page. We're tweeting, we're putting stuff on our website, so I would encourage customers to keep on board and keep looking at those different channels to make sure that you hear the latest news from Silver.
Thank you, Laura. I hope that's managed to answer most of your questions. So over to Dassos now. We've got time for a couple more questions before we round it off. So the first one of our contact and customer relations related questions are: how are you keeping Silver customers up to date, and what support are you providing for people who don't use the internet?
Thanks, Amy, and thank you for the question. Just as a quick reminder, with the exception of closing the office, all of our other contact channels have remained open and run at the normal operating hours. So our contact team who deal with calls, emails, web chat, and through our social media responses have all been working, albeit from home. So for customers who needed to find out anything, they've been able to call the team, and they've been able to either respond to the queries straight away or put customers in touch with the right people to support them without too much disruption. But throughout this, there's obviously been a lot of different messages from government, from different organisations, and we wanted to make sure that customers knew what our position was. So Laura mentioned the website, and that has been the easiest and quickest way to keep customers informed and up to date. We put some specific COVID-19 pages on our website, and we've kept them updated throughout this period. We also put posts on social media, and we email customers as well. So that is the easiest and quickest way. But as the question suggests, that we know we've got customers who aren't digital, don't have the facilities or the ability to go online. So we've been doing service update letters within our independent living schemes. We've been sending letters out frequently about what was happening there. And as I mentioned earlier, the phone calls, Phone Pals service has been brilliant as a way of keeping customers who feel isolated up to date with what's happening. So that's what we've done so far. As we move forward, we are looking at actually how we can help customers who do struggle to get online to actually become more digitally accessible, because it is easy once you know how. And like I say, it's the easiest way to stay in touch. So we're looking at that as we move forward, and we will continue to keep customers updated as things develop.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we've got time for one final question before we round it off. So for Dassos again, Alan mentioned earlier on in his introduction that we had locked down Silver's independent living homes before the lockdown actually began. Why did we do it slightly earlier, and how did we look after the people who were living there during the lockdown? We've got a few of our independent living customers dialed in at the moment listening in, so yeah, if you can answer that one please, Dassos. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So as we said, we started planning and preparing well in advance. We could see what was happening. We saw the infection rate was rising, and we took the decision to close our independent living schemes down a week before the national lockdown. And the simple reason was to keep our customers and our employees safe. So the lockdown meant that we said no more visitors to the schemes. We cancelled all events and social gatherings, and all of the communal areas were closed, including the catering facilities. And at the time, it was a really hard decision, because the idea of our schemes are that they are places that people can come together and socialise, and we were now saying that customers had to stay in their properties. Saying that, it was absolutely the right decision, and I'm really pleased we took what at the time was seen as an overcautious approach. To look after customers, we did a number of things. We made daily welfare calls, so these are in addition to the Phone Pals initiative, where we call customers every single day to see how they are, and if there's any way we can support them, either through our shopping initiative or through more regular contact. The catering facilities were closed down, but in the schemes where catering is provided, we delivered those meals, cooked meals, to customers' front doors in 2 of our schemes, so that they still had a hot meal. And as I've mentioned, the shopping and Phone Pals were introduced, which were really well received. And what's been really nice is, as well as delivering that, we've also been able to go the extra mile for our customers in a couple of examples. The first one is for VE celebrations. We were able to do some surprise gifts and foods, including some cupcakes, which look very delicious. I didn't get to try them; they looked lovely. And also, one of our customers celebrated their 100th birthday during the lockdown period, which normally we would have held a big party and brought everyone together for that. So what we were able to, and the scheme manager came up with the idea, was invited friends and family to celebrate the party from outside. They stood outside the customer's window with banners, sang happy birthday, all socially distanced, and there's a really nice video about on our website if you want to have a look. So yes, we took a cautious approach. We continue to take a cautious approach, so we've only just started opening the communal areas. We've put increased signage across our schemes. We've put hand sanitizers in lots of locations. We are looking next week to trial wall thermometers so people can check their temperature as they enter the scheme. So yes, we are being cautious, and we will continue to do so. But back to the original question, why did we do it? To protect customers and our employees.
Thank you. All right, I think that's all we have time for now. So Dassos, would you like to give the conclusion?
Yes, thank you. So I think after a bumpy start with the technology, I think it's run pretty smoothly since then. So thank you for not giving up on us straight away. For me, it's really important that we do communicate with customers. This isn't going to be the only way we do it. We will continue to communicate through other methods. But what we're going to do next week is we'll send out a satisfaction survey just to see what you've thought of this. Was it useful? Is there anything else you'd like to see? And if we get a good positive response to that, then we may run another one of these in the autumn. So thank you for your time, and enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much, and goodbye.